for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. Brought to you by TCS Customs and Logistics. Moving pieces, delivering peace of mind. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here in the Sick Podcast Network. Pierre McGuire is with us via audio, and I am in my home studio. Pierre, how are you, my friend?
Very well, safe and sound, Jimmy. Great to hear you today. I apologize to our viewers and listeners for yesterday, some technical difficulties, but I'm glad that Shane could sort it all out today in the studio, and thank you for your patience, Jimmy.
Of course, no worries, my friend. It's our pleasure, and I got some great questions to pass the time, as always, Pierre, from our great audience here in our community. So we're lucky to have them when situations like that arise. So good stuff. But Pierre, you were down in Fort Lauderdale doing more hits for CBS, and I wonder, Pierre, when you're there, what has been the biggest topic concerning the Stanley Cup Final that you guys have addressed? Whether it's the top players, the sleeper players, so to speak, the underrated guys, face-offs, power play. What's been the constant thread the most?
Can Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl win a Stanley Cup? And where I'm working, obviously, the studio is about 15 to 20 minutes away from sunrise, so everybody there is obviously hoping they can't. And, yesterday we had Scotty Bowman on. I know you were privy to that part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks they probably can, but he's got some question marks about it too. And I think the biggest thing is I talked to a legendary person in the game earlier today, and he said everybody in Canada is thinking, Edmonton's finally going to get this done. And this guy cautioned me. He said, the one thing people don't realize is the amount of pressure that's on the Oilers for game one. And I agreed. Jimmy,
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking to you about that forever.
Yep.
I don't really put a lot of stock in game ones, but this is a game one that matters, not so much for Florida, because they proved against Toronto they could lose 2 straight on the road and come back and win.
Right.
It matters a lot for Edmonton, Jimmy. This game one matters a ton.
100% agree, Pierre, and I'm going to get to the significance of that later on in my sick picks for the series and the game. But I agree with you, Pierre. I mean, I think back to some other series where, a game one mattered a ton. I'll go way back. I referenced this game the other day, that triple overtime Edmonton-Boston game in 1990.
Yeah,
And
Peter
I remember,
Klima.
Peter Klima. And I remember Pierre walking out of there after that Klima overtime goal, God rest his soul, and looking at my grandfather and saying, that's it. It's over. And he's like, it's only game one. I said, yeah, but sometimes game ones take on a whole new meaning for a specific team. It might not be both teams. It could just be one. Sometimes it's both. But there was just that feeling like they had to have that one. It was right there to set the tone. They were the underdogs. Now, I know Edmonton's not as big an underdog as Boston was that year, but I'm just trying to get the point across that this is a big one for them, especially after last year too, Pierre, considering how they fell back 3-0 in the series. I think it's huge for them to set the tempo and not obviously as well, Pierre, get under the false impression that they can pull off a comeback like that again.
They cannot allow Florida to get them out of their game. Whomever gets to their game first, and we know what Florida's game is, it's physical, it's fast, it's bordering on really nasty, and they run 4 lines early. Edmonton, whatever they want to establish early, whether it's tempo, whether it's star power, whether it's face-off dominant, whatever it is, getting on the power play, which is running at 30% right now in the playoffs, which is unbelievable. Whatever they need to establish, they better get to it before Florida gets to their game.
All right, and before we continue to just break things down here a bit, I want to remind everybody we are going to be joined by a guest today. Really excited to have him on. It was your idea, Pierre, and he got right back in touch when I dropped your name. Former NHL defenseman and former Florida Panthers defenseman Ed Jovanovski will be joining us soon, Pierre. I know you've got some good memories of, as they used to call him, a Jovo Cop back in the day.
Well, I've always thought so highly of Ed. When he was a young kid breaking into the league, obviously with Florida, then he's part of a massive trade that goes to Vancouver. I never thought he got enough respect out of his marketplace, and he knows that. I used to tell him that all the time. Thought he was a really underrated player outside of Vancouver and outside of Florida, where coaches and management people and even the fans appreciated him. But outside of his marketplace, I'm not sure Eddie was ever respected enough. He was a really, really good player, Jimmy.
I didn't see him play, Pierre, but, like I've told you before, I have some friends from Windsor and went to a ton of Spitfires games when he was there. And they said he was amazing when he was playing for the Windsor Spitfires.
Well, what's amazing is I think he only started playing organized hockey when he was 12 years old.
Wow.
It's an amazing story. Eddie's a fantastic athlete. He's extremely strong and physical, obviously. He could skate for a big man. He was nasty when he had to be. His skill level, making the first pass, was very underrated.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought really highly of him. He's a player that when I was still coaching and in management side, tried to acquire a couple times, just couldn't get him out of, either Florida or Vancouver. But no, I always a big fan of Eddie. Always a huge fan.
Well, we will get his perspective on the Stanley Cup Finals and all the Florida Panthers news in a bit. But getting back to just us two looking at it, Pierre, I heard you on with our good friend Mitch Melnick yesterday, and you mentioned he asked you for one player that maybe people aren't talking about that could have a huge difference in this series. I want you to tell our listeners who that player was. He's on the Edmonton Oilers.
Well, Adam Henrique's going to matter a lot for faceoffs, Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
Draisaitl's a good faceoff guy, but McDavid's not. And Matthias Janmark is not. I think Matthias Janmark's like around 30%. But, when you break down the stats, Henrique matters a lot on faceoffs. He's really going to be an important player for them because if Edmonton doesn't establish puck possession, they can't play their tempo game because they're going to be chasing the puck rather than having the puck.
Right.
It's really important. Now, I will say this, to be fair, Barkov's almost at 60% on faceoffs. He's in Bergeron territory.
Yeah.
That matters a lot. But Sammy Bennett's below 35%, Jimmy. That's not nearly what I thought when I evaluated the numbers. I thought he was higher. He's not. Anton Lundell is in good shape, and Tomas Nosek is in good shape. But the guy that needs to be better for Florida is going to have to be on faceoffs. It's going to be Sammy Bennett.
Yeah, that's a great point there, and I'm surprised too as well. It's a good pickup by you, Pierre. You look at the goaltending matchup. I mean, obviously it goes to to Bobrovsky. But I think people right now, I get it. I understand, given his history and his track record, how people are having a hard time trusting Stuart Skinner. But as I said to you a couple shows ago, I think he's proven that he can deliver by now. Like, is he in that top tier? No, he's not. He's not in Bobrovsky's tier there. But I think he's proven enough, at least for his own teammates, that they can trust him and they know if they need a big save, he can make it. Will he make it? That's a whole other question. But they know that he has and he can do it. Pierre, what's just been your take on his rise? Because it was very up and down in the beginning, but it's been a more steady climb in the last two rounds.
Boy, I love what you just had to say, Jimmy. I couldn't agree with you more. One of the first things I want to do is salute him, Stuart Skinner. Mm-hmm. I can't believe how mentally tough he must be. Yeah. Because, think about what happened to him in the first round. He gets pulled after losing 2 straight to L.A. Edmonton's his hometown. He can't go anywhere without anybody recognizing him. They're down on him right away. Pickard comes in and steals that series, then starts the Edmonton or the Vegas series and does fantastically well. Then he gets hurt and Stewart comes in and he loses with less than a second to go in game number 3. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh no, if you're an Edmonton fan, here we go again. And then all of a sudden he has back-to-back shutouts. Yeah. That takes a lot to reel that in, Jimmy. You know that. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of respect for him mentally. He's a big guy. Clearly, he's a tremendous athlete. Now he just needs to be more consistent. And if he can find that consistency, that's going to be a big deal for Edmonton and very positive for the Oilers.
I'd agree. All right, we're going to probably have Ed on here in about 5 minutes. There are 2 big news items today, Pierre, in the NHL. We'll start with the Pittsburgh Penguins naming now former Rangers assistant Dan Muse as their head coach. What can you tell the listeners and viewers about Muse and what he'll bring to the Penguins?
Well, he's a kid that played at Canton High School in Massachusetts. He went to a Division III school at the time, Stonehill College. He played there. Started coaching as a volunteer assistant at Milton Academy. which is a high-end prep school just on the south, starting at the South Shore of Boston in Milton, Mass. His greatest success was probably in the USHL with the Chicago Steel. He won a Clark Cup, part of USA Hockey National Team Development Program. Got his NHL break working with Peter Laviolette and Phil Halsey and Kevin McCarthy down in Nashville. Eventually fired, moves on to the New York Rangers with Laviolette again. And they have a little bit of success a year ago and no success this year. I think it's a couple things. It's Pittsburgh, want more of a modern day coach, so to speak, and an analytics person, which Muse kind of is, number one. And number two, I think they want somebody to grow with their team. And I just said this on CBS, they're probably not going to be happy with me, but they're in a full rebuild. They're not in a retool. They're probably going to use the term retool. I'm telling you, they're in a rebuild.
Yes,
they made the playoffs in 3 years. They've won one playoff series since 2017. They're in a full-on rebuild. Trust me, they can't be happy with that. So they want a coach that's going to want to grow with their rebuilding team. He's got a pedigree with working with young players, and we'll see how it works. Look, Detroit tried this with Derek Lalonde. It didn't work. Let's give Dan Muse the opportunity to do it.
That's right. I'm very familiar with Milton Academy, as you know, Pierre. We've had some good battles, St. Sebastian's and Milton Academy back in the day.
That's right.
The other item, Pierre, the Avalanche re-up with Brock Nelson. Did you like that deal? It's a 3-year, $22.5 million deal. I've had some people text me saying that's way too much for an aging guy that's had a lot of injury problems. But at the same time, I really think now you look up the middle with them, and I know it didn't work as well as they might have liked in the playoffs, but maybe the guys were still adapting to each other. But they still, on paper, are pretty deep up the middle by keeping him around.
Here's what I know. They had a 2-0 lead in the third period at Dallas in a Game 7. I don't know what happened there. I wasn't in the dressing room. I wasn't on the bench. That wouldn't have happened, I can tell you, in most situations. They let their guard down. They had bad matchups. And Mikko Rantanen and their former teammate ripped them apart. Ripped them apart. And I don't blame the forwards as much as I blame the defense there, but there were some forwards that weren't paying attention to detail. Brock Nelson was not one of them. They paid a huge ransom to get Brock Nelson. They had to keep him. They had no choice, so they paid a little bit more. The cap's going up. I think he's got more than enough left to give you 3 years of really good hockey. I think he's either a 2 or a 3. He's not a 1. He'll be fine there. I think he'll produce enough points to merit the money that he'll be making. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Colorado go from, being knocked out in the first round to potentially winning a Stanley Cup next year. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
I'm with you on that. I like the future for them. All right, let's get over and talk some Florida Panthers right now with our guest, former NHL defenseman and Florida Panthers analyst, Ed Jovanovski, joining us here on the Eye Test. Hey, Ed, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Good to hear you guys.
Glad to have you.
Hey, Jimmy, this is the best thing ever. I probably just drove by Eddie's Country Club. I'm going to offer my services as a caddy for Ed.
Where are you at, Pierre?
I just left Fort Lauderdale on my way to Jupiter, so I'll stop by your course. Ed, you don't need a caddy. I'll do it for you.
All right.
Yeah.
All the courses now, the problem is they're all in the airification stage right now, so
yeah,
kind of a crappy time to do it with a lot of guests in town, with the playoffs and everything. So, but anyway, good to be on with you guys.
One thing I noticed throughout this playoff run about the Florida Panthers, Jovo, and I give the Edmonton too. I noticed it a bit more about them this time, second time around, but it's just the way it's not like the playoffs to them. It's a job. They're there. They're doing their job. They're not by any means distracted by the importance of everything around them. They're just in a zone, and you can see it build and build, just as we did last year. What have you noticed in terms of that development about the mindset as a whole of that team? Since let's go back to that 2023 series against the Boston Bruins, how more mature they are now in that sense.
Yeah, I think you hear the coach talk about when you lose, we learn as a group. And I think, when you look as the playoffs move along, especially here. You win the Eastern Conference, and they know what's at stake. You got to, everyone's in this to win the Stanley Cup. So you can see the maturation level. Obviously, winning it last year, the eye is, on the prize. And I think as a group, they've kind of been through this the last handful of years. They've had that success. They've had some disappointment. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're in your third straight Stanley Cup Final. So they're well rehearsed in it for the guys that have been there. Now, what a treat for the guys that haven't been there. And you hear a lot of the guys talk about, listen, they're playing for those guys. They want those guys to have an opportunity to hoist Lord Stanley. And I think they're just kind of keeping everything kind of game by game or day by day as we move into the games here starting tonight, shift at a time and just kind of matter of fact, just going upon your business.
Exactly.
Hey, Ed, you know what I thought of you as a player and as a person? The utmost respect for you. And I'm watching this Florida Panther team play, Ed, and I'm saying, who fits in the style of play? Ed Jovanovski. Ed, I got to ask you about the way they play. How comfortable would you have been in that system, and how much do you enjoy watching it?
Well, we all enjoy watching it. I mean, you hear around the league, man, everybody's kind of like want to simulate the Florida Panthers. And, they're a defense-first team right out of the coach's mouth. I mean, he was just, right when he got here, his main focus was teach the defensive side of the play and get to a point where everyone's comfortable with that, because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's going to win you a championship. And it did. So the proof is in the pudding on how you need to play. They're an in-your-face team, Pierre. I mean, that's it. They're dogs out there. They just kind of relentless on the forecheck. Hear a lot about their forecheck. They really do have that speed coming through the neutral zone. But where does it start? The puck's got to get out of your zone, right? And I think when you look at a whole of this team, I mean, they're not spending a lot of time in their zone. They have guys that can move the puck. They're elusive in the defensive zone and make plays. It's not always, which we see a lot of today, is the flipper. I don't mind it when you're flipping it to speed going into that area or you're somewhat in trouble. But the Panthers do make that effort to take that next step, make that tape-to-tape pass, good support coming up the ice, and just get on the forecheck. And I think that's their bread and butter, Pierre. It's something that's worked for them, and I think it's something that puts teams on their heels big time.
And you would have been a perfect defenseman in this system, Ed. You would have been awesome in this system.
Well, sometimes we don't have to think too much. You're better off. And I know when you overthink the game, you can make it really miserable on yourself. And that's a long, that takes time to, as a young defenseman to really think about. But I think Sylvain Lefebvre has done an unbelievable job, with the back end there and the PK and just kind of showing the guys, let the puck do the work. You don't got to do too much. And that's why I think Seth Jones coming into the fold here, just a piece of the puzzle for him. Just do your job, be Seth Jones, be the best you can be, and everyone else will do their own job.
Man,
Great.
Jimmy, that's so well said by Ed. That's so well said. Really good, Ed.
Great segue. That was going to be my next question. What have you thought of Seth Jones fitting in? We all know, I mean, I think if anyone that knows Brad Marchand and knows the Florida Panthers and that dressing room, you can kind of think that he would fit in just fine. Like he's sort of made for those guys. But in terms of Seth Jones, what have you seen in terms of his progression fitting in and understanding that system?
Well, just what you guys have seen, I think he's not a huge raw guy. I think he just goes out there and does his thing. When you look at a big defenseman like that can skate and get involved offensively, it was a little timid, I guess, early on when he first came when the trade happened. But you can see him as the playoffs has gone along, really comfortable and picking his right time. And that's another thing that is tough on when do I jump? Well, when you have some ice in front of you, you want to take that ice, and then when you need to make a play, you make a play. But as that's covering the offensive side of things, but he's so big. Him and Mikkola cover so much ice in the defensive zone. Right. They work well off each other. They've been a tower of power, those guys back there, and he just fit in seamlessly. I mean, there's not much more to say. I think the proof is there, kind of what he's done and what he's meant for this team. because we're all shocked at the time. I mean, this is a massive trade that went down.
Oh, yeah.
And no one was talking about that trade. So kudos to Bill Zito on pulling the trigger, not only for the team right now, but as the team moves along, because he had term left on his deal.
Hey, Ed, you played a lot of matchup situations. What's the difference of matching up against Connor McDavid and matching up against Leon Draisaitl?
Oh, that's pick your poison, right? And I don't think you're gonna, every shift opportunity, to shut these guys down. They're that good. And you can hear the guys talk about it. They're going to create opportunities, whether it's them with their speed, moving it to their line mates, or just sheer kind of taking over a hockey game. I think the Panthers are okay with that. I think they defend as five, and I think that's what you have to do as a group. And the old cliche, time and space, right? Try to make it as tough for him and Draisaitl to get their pace going and be that effective every time they're out there. And we hear about defending in layers. The Panthers do a really good job at that. The good angling where you do try to cut his ice down, have him try to work in small areas. Don't give him too much ice. Good back checking, allow your defensemen to kind of hold their gap in certain areas. But let's face it, I didn't play against these guys, but just talking to the guys, they're like, Jovo, you have no idea how fast this guy is going. And his hands are moving at the same pace.
Oh my God.
So they're two beasts. I mean, they're both, heck of players, and you just got to do your best to defend as well as you can.
Just to, echo on that, and just for both of you guys, Pierre as a coach and you as a player, Joe, when you played against players like that, now I know you just said his speed is obviously unique, but is it tough sometimes to not let everything they can do distract you from the other guys on their team? Can their brilliance distract you, so to speak?
Yeah, if you get too focused on these guys know how to pass too, right? Yeah. So they're going to use their line mates when it's there, and I think when you look at the Oilers team, a lot of talk about their depth contributing right now. So I think they're comfortable with their four lines that they have. I mean, obviously, special attention needs to be paid to when these guys are on the ice, but you can't underestimate, what other players can do on their team. And I think with the veteran group that this team has, and not to get too crazy on the matchups. I think if you're out there with those guys, you'd play and you defend as hard as you can until you can make a change. And I think that's what the coach has talked about. They're not going to run out of their way to get Ekblad or Forsling or, these guys to match up against them because, Knobloch's not, not a dumb guy. No. He can make those, adjustments on the fly too. So you start getting into that war. But overall, I think the confidence is there to defend these guys whenever you have the ability to do so. And I think that's what the Panthers will do.
Hey, Ed, one of the things about Edmonton is they've got amazing power play numbers. They're at almost 30% in the playoffs, which is unbelievable. Your Florida Panther team is taking about 10 minutes of penalties per game. Eddie, can they bring that down to 6? Are they going to be disciplined enough to bring it down to 6 minutes a game?
Well, I sure hope so. I there's one thing playing aggressive and, killing off some tough penalties. I mean, the offensive zone penalties, hurting the lazy penalties usually end up in your net. Absolutely. I think that's obviously one of the things that is going to be discussed. Do your best to remain disciplined and don't let, the power play, you're going to give them 5-6 chances a night. They're going to end up scoring. And it could be the difference in the hockey game because usually, special teams do play a big part in it. And I think when you're looking at that kind of dynamic group out there, especially worrying about Bouchard at the point, I think they got a lot of players that can do some damage there. So you want to limit as much as you can. I think being on the right side of the puck and keep your sticks down is going to be the best recipe, I think, for keeping these guys, off the power play.
Eddie, just to further on that, I said to Pierre like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this exact topic, and that the Florida Panthers, to me, and I've been covering this game for 25 years, are one of the best teams I've ever seen at walking that line. and getting under the skin of the opponent without crossing and within the parameters of the rules. Sometimes they're going to slip up. They're human. But what is it about them that they're able to do that? Is that something that they focus on in practice? Is it just, God-given stuff that they have inside them? Or what's your take on that?
They're cup champs. They get a little leeway. Yeah, I think, sometimes you're like, just get out of there because you know what happens, right? The ref gets the last look and you get your punch in there. But, I think for the most part, guys, they play hard within the whistles, and they're not going to shy away from any extracurricular after. And I don't know. I think it's just one of those things where you want to remain in the battle. And I think for this group, you're not seeing, too much undisciplined kind of after the whistle, but they do play on an edge. And I think that's what makes them so effective is when they're kind of playing kind of on their toes and they're really kind of assertive in these certain areas. And it makes them really good because once the line changes, Barkov's line, now you got Bennett coming out there. Now you got Lundell coming out there and Nosek. I mean, kind of throw that red wave at you of a whole bunch of players kind of can play that same way.
Right. Pierre?
Ed, I've always been a fan. Owners own, presidents preside, managers manage, coaches coach, scouts scout, trainers train, and players play. You've seen a lot of different ownership groups in your career. How good are the Violas?
They're unbelievable. And you hear a lot of it starts from the top, right? I mean, you get ownership that is kind of their, open wallet on kind of, hey, this is an opportunity. Let's build a team. But when Dale Talon's got a piece of this as well, with the players that, still under his kind of watch. But Bill Zito's come into the fold here, and obviously I don't need to go through it. You guys know, I mean, every move he's kind of made is kind of panned out, and anytime he feels there's an opportunity to better the team, he does so. And the players reward. I mean, as much as you're going to get from the top, the players, like you said, Pierre, got to go out there and play and are playing for each other, playing for the community. And this team has had nothing but unbelievable success, especially the last few years. This amount of hockey, 300 plus games over the last 3 years this team has played, which is unbelievable. Yeah. But yeah, everyone kind of reaps the benefits, and you see players that come into the fold. Montour was handsomely paid in Seattle. You have that success. You lose OEL to Toronto, kind of rejuvenated his career. So I think everyone's excited kind of coming into the fold, and what happens kind of in the off season, we'll see. But then they kind of retool, and they've had unbelievable success doing so.
Great stuff. Eddie, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Enjoy the Stanley Cup Final, and hopefully we'll get you on down the line sometime. All right?
All right, guys.
Hey, Eddie, before you go, Eddie, I just want to say one thing so our fans understand, especially our younger ones, how good you were. I'm going to tell everybody right now, I'm very comfortable saying this. Jimmy knows how I am. If Eddie Jovanovski was playing in the NHL today, he'd be making more than $10 million a year. That's how good Eddie was, just so everybody understands that. Eddie, I'm mad at your age. I'm mad at your agent, Patrick Morris. He never got you enough.
It's, we were all handsomely paid. Everyone paves the way for us, right? So it kind of went down the line, and it's good to see the guys getting taken care of with the cap going up. The game's in a great situation, right?
Yeah.
So
and a lot of it's because of guys like you that did a heck of a job at a time when it was the dead puck era, and it wasn't that easy to do, Eddie. You know what I'm talking about. It was a tough time in the league, and you did a heck of a job. You were a great ambassador for the two cities you were in. And I can tell you right now, Ed, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I never had a bad visit with you. It was a delight spending time with you when you were playing.
I appreciate it, Pierre. Thanks.
Good stuff. Yep. Thanks a lot.
Ed
Jovanovski joining us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. And you know what, Pierre, I haven't seen much of him as a broadcaster. I've been watching a little more just as the Panthers get better, obviously. But he's good. You say he's good on the ice. He's really come along as a broadcaster, Pierre.
He's a fantastic person. He's a great teammate. There's some heartbreaking things in his career that I think he would have loved, different outcomes, and it had nothing to do with him. It just had to do with, some of the teams he was on.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, like I'm telling you, he was a heck of a player. He was and he was nasty as all get out. He was tough as nails.
He would fit right in with this Panthers team, wouldn't he?
Oh my God, that's why I asked him the question. I'm like,
Yeah.
he would have been perfect. Like, I'm not going to say who they could have taken out, but all I know is this: Eddie would have been a top 4 guy for them, and he would have made guys pay the price. They would have had no fun playing against him. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, Ian Ross in the chat section right now telling us Jovo and DJ Smith were a handful on a very tough Windsor Spitfire team.
Yeah, well, that's spot on. Couldn't be more correct. I scouted both of them. Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more.
Great stuff there. All right, let's get to our sponsors and my picks of the series. Did the series yesterday. I'll do it again today for those that missed it, and the game 1 tonight, and then we will get into the Q&A. So let me tell you about TCS Customs and Logistics. You can unlock the full potential of your shipping operation with TCS Customs and Logistics. From around the corner to around the world, flatbeds to air freight, customs clearance to drawback consulting. TCS is a one-stop shop for all things transport, moving pieces and delivering a peace of mind. For a no-obligation customs or freight quote, contact sickpodcast at shiptcs.com. Again, that is sickpodcast at shiptcs.com. And, of course, our wonderful sponsors over at Betway, where you can still go all the way with Betway. And if you lose on your first bet, you can still get credited up to $200. You have to be a new customer, though, to get this special. So if you haven't signed up yet, use the QR code right in front of you if you're watching. If not, go to the details section in the website and sign up for your new account there and redeem your welcome offer. The offer is not available in Ontario. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 18 plus and always bet responsibly. Let's go to our sick picks of the night.
It's time for Sick Picks, brought to you by Betway.
I'm going to run them down here quick, so take some notes, and here we go. For the series, I like the Edmonton Oilers to win the series. You can get that right now at minus 120 value. I just feel like it's their time, and I think it's going to go the distance again. I like it to go 7 games. So if you take the Oilers in 7, you can get that at plus 550 value. Also, a little fun one here because, you know, with guys like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl out there, or Matthew Tkachuk, Brad Meyer, there's so much talent and skill on the ice right now. I do think we'll see a hat trick in this series. And if you just pick one hat trick or more, that's all that has to happen. One player has to get a hat trick no matter what team. It's plus 340 value. Also, I like the Oilers to win game 1. And that's the big one we were talking about earlier, Pierre, and the series. If they combine that, winning game 1 and then win the series, that is plus 200 value. I also, and this is my sleeper one, Pierre, you're probably going to think I'm nuts, but he's been quietly having a great playoffs. And if not for the likes of Draisaitl and McDavid, he'd probably be the leading Conn Smythe candidate for the Oilers, at least. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, I think when all is said and done, because so much focus will be on Draisaitl and McDavid, when all is said and done, I think he leads the series in points. I know I'm probably nuts, but that's plus 1,700 value. I couldn't resist. For game 1, I like the Oilers minus 1.5, so that means they have to win by 2. That's plus 180 value. And I also like going back to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, an anytime goal by him, and then that's at plus 240 value, and Evan Bouchard, 2 or more points at plus 320 value. All right, let's get to our Q&A. What do we got? Renaissance Resistor. Would Cole Caulfield be an untouchable, and if it was possible, would you package him in a trade for Tage Thompson, Pierre?
That's
a good question.
Very good question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have a 1-2 punch down the middle of Tage Thompson and Suzuki, and you got Demidov and Slavkovsky, I think you could move Cole Caulfield. But I want to stress this. It's got to be for a player that's got instantaneous impact like Tage. Mm-hmm. If not, I'm not trading Cole Caulfield, no.
I'm with you on that. It's got to be a perfect hockey trade, which I think that has the potential to be in terms of helping both teams right away.
I don't know why Buffalo would do that. Like,
I don't see them doing it. You know, I know that I get asked this a lot about Tage Thompson. You know, do you think the Bruins can get him? You think the Canadians can? You think this? And I'm like, I don't think Buffalo's going to trade him. I think he is.
Why would they? Who's better than him in their organization?
Thank you. And that's not.
They already traded Dylan Cousins. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Do they not understand the concept that centers don't fall off trees?
Yeah.
Just pay attention to Florida. You just heard Eddie Jovanovski talk about it. And again, you don't need notes to know this. You look at Sasha Barkov, you look at Sam Bennett, you look at Lundell, and then you look at Thomas Nosek, and we haven't even talked about Nico Sturm. Like, they're so deep at the center ice position, they can afford to lose Kevin Stenlund, who was a key part of their cup last year. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Those guys are hard to find, Jimmy.
Exactly. And it's just more proof that that's how you build, right up the middle. All right, next question. Alex Jovanovski, Pierre, you did the last cup final rematch. Great call there, Alex. Good memory. My Wings lost, and I'm still not over it and probably won't ever be. Besides the Mario text, is there something the Oilers can learn from those Penguins right now?
Yes.
What is that?
A lot. A lot. Well, here's the thing. I said on CBS, and maybe that's where Alex got it. In 2008, when Pittsburgh played, I could have told you there was no way they were winning the cup because they weren't ready. They didn't have enough. They didn't have guys that knew how to win. So they had a lot of work to do. And Ray Sherrill did the work. He brought in a lot of guys for the 09 cup run. And you go look at it. They were ready to win the cup in 09. You know, Max Talbot was ready to win. Sidney Crosby was ready to win. You go look at all the guys that Billy Guerin was ready to win.
Mm-hmm.
Go look at it. Jordan Stahl was ready to win. Like, they had guys that were ready to win. They were not ready to win in 08. They just weren't mature enough. And obviously Fleury was really ready to win. So, you know, I think that's a big part of it. Learn from that. I think Edmonton's got a chance to win. I don't think they will win, but I think they got a real good chance to win.
And would you say it's because of what you're talking about right there, Pierre? Because I always, and Mark Recchi told me this, you know, to be a champion, you have to watch another champion win it. You have to feel that pain and learn that lesson of what it's like to be on the ice and see that other team celebrating. And he said he's been in those situations before. And then the next year, the team he was on was able to do. And of course, the Boston Bruins were one of those teams.
Well, here's the one thing that's really important on that. Scotty Bowman talked about this yesterday on CBS Sports. When Wayne Gretzky and the Edmonton Oilers lost their first Stanley Cup final, they were playing the New York Islanders. And when Gretzky and the guys were walking out of the rink, they saw the Islander players. They were banged up. They were bruised up. They were broken in half. They had ice bags all over. The guys looked emaciated.
Uh-huh.
And Wayne said to a bunch of guys, we don't look like that. In order for us to win, we need to look more like that, because there's a certain toll. I use this term a lot with players that I train. There's a certain toll you have to pay. And until you're prepared to know the pain you have to pay the toll, you'll never win. You need to learn what the cost of the toll is.
100%. All right, next question. Juice_031017. How big a series is this for McDavid and his legacy, and to do it against the Florida Panthers again?
It's mammoth. It's gigantic. I talked about this a lot too. If you want to be considered, you know, and I do believe he's one of the greatest players we ever had in the sport, but especially in the last 30 years. But in order to really be on the pantheon with Lemieux, with Crosby, with Messier, with Gretzky, with Yager, with all these great players, in order to really be there, you need to take a look at the 1989 celebration for Lanny McDonald and the Calgary Flames, and the relief on Lanny's face when he's got the Punch Bowl cup to his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I would be showing that to Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Evan Bouchard and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Say, there's relief. That's what you got to do to win. And until they win, they will never be in the same boat as all the other great players.
I'm with you on that. And that's a great vision as well, Pierre. And I could think of one more I'll add too would be Bork when he finally got the cup and sacked.
Yeah, Raymond's that's such a good one, Jimmy. That's really good. Yeah, really good.
That was a moment. All right, next question. Pearl of Wisdom. Do you think Leafs fans will regret the loss of Mitch Marner next year? Perlo, if he leaves, we don't know for sure if he's leaving. I think he is. But Yeah, I think sometimes you don't know what you got until it's gone. I don't know, though. We'll see how everything goes.
Perlo,
Yeah.
I love your questions, and I really appreciate you reaching out to the show. Make a lot of sense in a lot of things that you say. I'm not sure that, well, Mitch Marner's not gone yet, but will they miss him? Yeah. How do you replace 100 points from your lineup?
Mm-hmm.
You know, those guys are hard to find. You know, I've said this when Joe Thornton got traded out of Boston. Everybody kind of laughed. You know, I got a big fight on the air with one of my partners at the time.
Yep.
And I said, you think this is a good trade for Boston? They're getting 3 adequate players who have had tremendous careers, but none of them will ever have a career like Joe Thornton.
No.
Not a chance.
No.
Not a chance. So when you got elite, super elite players, they're hard. They're really hard. There's not everybody's Marty St. Louis that never got drafted and turns up in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
You know, most guys that end up in the Hall of Fame ended up being drafted in the first or second or third round. And so Joe Thornton was a first overall. There's a reason why he was a first overall. So all I can say is, you know, Mitchell Marner was a 4th overall. I'm not sure that they'll ever be able to replace him.
Pierre, would you agree with me when I say this? And look, I understand there's some situations with, you know, superstar players where it's just not working out, or maybe something happens on or off the ice that just can't be repaired. It happens. I understand that. But there's also situations where maybe I wonder, okay, maybe your superstar needs to change. No one's arguing that. But at the same time, don't you as an organization need to adapt to him? And I'm not saying you focus on one player. I get it's a team sport. But if you get what I'm saying, because it was this thing with Joe, right? I remember, and it's like everyone wanted him to be that big bad Bruin or a Cam Neely. It just wasn't him. But that doesn't mean he wasn't a superstar. He's great at what he is and who he is. And I just feel like sometimes teams give up on the superstar too much because they build this idea about what he should be and can't accept when he's not that, even if he's still good at something else.
All good questions. I don't know. I mean,
I think of Jack Eichel too.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm going to say what I said about Joe Thornton again. Are there other things that are problems for Toronto? Yeah, there are. They need more supplemental offense. I don't know Mitch Marner is going to play as a 4th line player for them. Like, they need to find guys. I've used this stat with you before, Jimmy. I need somebody to explain to me how AJ Greer, Jonah Gadjevich, and Tomas Nosek had more points from Game 3 to Game 7 combined as a line than Marner, Matthews, and Nyes. I need somebody to explain that to me.
Yep. I'm with you on that. I get you, Pierre. It just, I guess each situation is its own, you know, it's individual, but it's just, I don't know. I hate when teams just give up. Like you said, I think Perlo's right. There may be things you won't miss, but there's going to be things you do miss about Mitch Marner in Toronto if he leaves. All right, next question.
I think so.
Randy Workman, Jimmy and Pierre, how much can the combine affect the prospects outlook, Pierre?
It depends. I mean, a lot of it's physical testing. None of it's on ice. Sam Bennett did no pull-ups his prospect year, but he still found a way to, you know, be drafted early. I don't know. Middlestat, too, is another one. Got drafted early. He's in Boston now, but, you know, you look at it, I think it's a fair number. It can affect you, I think, more in a positive way than a negative way. Especially if you blow the stuff out. If you blow it right out, you can do some damage.
Well, like you said a couple times too, Pierre. I mean, you really put a lot into the interview and understanding who this person is, who this kid, like where he's tracking as a person, not just as a player.
So we didn't have a combine back in the day when I was doing it really, you know, full time and at a high level. But here's what I would tell you. This is just my advice for the scouts out there listening. We didn't have the combine, but if we liked the guy's first interview, when we got to the draft, we might do 2 or 3 more with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, just because, you know, maybe you didn't have a long interview with the guy at the combine, it doesn't mean that, you know, you can't meet with him 2 or 3 times. You know, whether you go to his house. I know one of the big things is I like to go to someone's house and meet his parents and see how he interacts with his parents. You can do that. There are no rules against it.
Yep.
So there's a lot you can do. And yeah, the combine's good because I do think there's a gauge, but I also think the interview is really important.
All right, next question.
Approaching a railroad
Bad
crossing.
lay law. Jimmy, if the Avs explore trading Natchez, do you think Boston would be in the mix? I think they would be, but Chad, I don't think the Avs are going to do that. I think they're pretty happy with what they got from him so far. Pierre,
Okay, I'm just going to ask you a question. Like somebody told me today, oh, Marty Natchez might be available. I said, where'd you hear that? Well, I read it on the internet. Are we still going there? Is that what we're doing?
Unfortunately, yeah, that's the way it's going right now.
Well, I can tell all our listeners and viewers, that's not how I do business.
Nope. And me neither. Pierre has taught me well. All right, next question. A moment of clarity. Hi, if Barkov shuts down McDavid again, how much does that elevate Barkov?
Oh, Barkov's elevated back-to-back Selke trophies.
Yeah.
He's already in rarefied air. Offensive point production is huge. He's already a Stanley Cup winner. He's gone 3 times in a row to the Stanley Cup Final. He's been a go-to player. If they win again and he does the same thing, and I don't know when he wants to retire, but I'll just tell you this right now. That puts you in very, very rarefied air, Hall of Fame kind of discussion.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right, next question. Ethan Russell, would Byron be a good fit with the Carolina Hurricanes?
Who?
Bo Byram.
Yeah, both's good. My only thing is I'd want to see concussion reports and injury reports. That's what I would want to see. That's what I'd want to see. So,
I do hope that he finds a home soon and gets some traction. It's been a tough go for him. All right, next question. Renaissance Resistor. Does the Nelson signing and the Pens head coaching hire increase the odds for the Habs to acquire Crosby?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't even begin to go down that road. Here's what I'm going to say. I think Dan Muse's hiring is an opportunity for him to grow with a very young developing team. And I said this earlier on CBS, and I'll say it again. Sidney Crosby is not part of the problem there. He's part of the solution. And Dan Muse is lucky that he's going to have a guy to work with like Sidney Crosby, whose character and effort level and work habits are unimpeachable. Sidney Crosby is one of the truly great players that ever played in this league, and his longevity is mind-shattering because he's been targeted since he's been 14 years old. That being said, I'm not holding out great hope for the Pittsburgh Penguins being a playoff team next year, Jimmy.
No, I don't think they're there. So, I think it's not going to go away, but it's something, as we get deep into the season, it's something we'll explore again. It's nothing. It will come back. We know that, unfortunately. And I feel bad that Crosby's going to have to deal with it all this season, but he's tough enough. All right, next question. Murray McDonald. Who do you see the Habs signing in free agency? I think they use another defenseman. Maybe.
Yeah, D-man, but so the biggest hunt for Montreal is the second line center.
Right. I just don't see that free agency.
What's that?
I said, I don't know if I see that happening via free agency, though, because
I don't either. Yeah. Neither do I.
Yeah.
I see that being part of a trade. So I agree with you. I see that being a trade. I don't see that being a free agent signing.
All right. Next
question.
I just don't. What do we got, guys? Renaissance Resistor. Does Merca have first pairing potential? I'm not sure who he's referring to, Pierre. Sorry.
No, I apologize. I don't know either. I apologize.
Sorry about that, Renaissance. Next question. Juice_031-017. Assuming Matthew Schaefer goes first overall to the Isles, should the Sharks draft Misa and move Will Smith over to the wing full time? Interesting thought.
I think that, okay. So this is where it gets to be a bit of a sticky wicket. I'm not prepared to say anybody in terms of numbers after 1. Schaefer needs to go 1. Now, I don't know who's going to take one. What happens if the Islanders trade one?
Mm-hmm.
Because they could.
Mm-hmm.
You know, James Higgins is somebody they're talking about a lot.
That's what the fan base wants. I'll tell you that.
But I'm talking to hockey guys that, you know,
Yeah.
think it might be a natural where Islanders could get more than just, you know, James Higgins. They might be able to get an established player or two.
Exactly.
And they already did some serious damage with Colorado on the Brock Nelson deal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Richie's a heck of a player, Jimmy.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen play, but I mean, everyone I talk to says he's great.
I was just with his assistant coach the other night, and Patty Sexton, and you know, we talked about him. But they're a bunch of. I've watched him a ton this year. He's a heck of a player.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there. That's why I don't like speculating about this draft. And again, I'm not trying to run for cover. I'm just trying to be honest with the viewers and listeners. This thing's so off the rails, it's ridiculous.
Yep. And by the way, Pierre, Renaissance was referring to Rademirka, the defenseman prospect that some are saying might go top 10.
Yeah, no, I know who it is. I just didn't know who. So
yeah, I don't know.
Could he? He could. I mean, could he? Yes, he could. Do I think it's there? I'd have to see more, and that's where a lot more study has to go into play.
Yeah, big kid though, 6'6", 207.
Yep, 100%.
All right, next question. If Jamie Benn walks this offseason, who should be the next captain of the Dallas Stars?
Great question.
Mm-hmm. I had a name come right in my head, Pierre, but I don't know if you'll agree with it.
Go.
Marchment?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think they'll do that. I wonder about where Rantanen is. I wonder about where Heiskanen is.
Yeah, that's probably the guy.
Those are the two that I would probably have at the top of the list.
All right. Next question. Alex Jovanovski, is there anything Knobloch can learn from last year about going against Maurice? Line changes, matchups, timeouts, strategy, power play, PK, anything you think he will try to change?
Yeah, the number one thing is don't let the series get away from you too quick. Last year they got down 3-0. The series got away from them. And I've said this to a lot of people, and this is why I say everybody wants to be in the Stanley Cup Final. And once you get there the first time, you're like, okay, this is going to last for 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how they space the games out. The problem is you can be out of it in a week. You can be out of it in 7 days. So you got to find a way. If you lose game 1 or you lose game 2, if you're Edmonton, you cannot get, 3 games behind in a series. You just can't. So that's what I think he's learned. You have to figure out ways to stem the tide.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, next question. Juice_031017. Pierre, what are your thoughts on top draft eligible prospects Jackson Smith and Jack Ivankovic committing to Michigan and Penn State this season?
Yep. Both really good players. Nightingale's a coach at Michigan. Or sorry, not Michigan. Sorry, Michigan State. But that's not where Ivankovic's going. I think it's a good move for both kids. I feel bad saying that because I do think there's a place for Major Junior, but I think both those kids are fast-tracked athletically, and I think that's probably going to lead to more competitiveness for them.
All right, next question. Randy Workman, Jimmy and Pierre, do you think J.J. Peterka gets traded?
Boy, his name keeps coming up, doesn't it?
Really is now, huh? I don't get it, but.
Well, they must have done a really thorough investigation of their locker room situation and their team.
Okay.
Because there are too many names out there. This is almost starting to sound like the New York Rangers from last summer.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Jimmy, we were talking about even before all this stuff happened. And I remember saying to Jimmy, like, something went on there. Something had to go on there because there are too many names being leaked in the paper. And it's kind of the same thing right now with Buffalo. This guy's available. That guy's available. What about this guy? And I'm like, whoa. I had an NHL executive, and I'm not going to say the player's name because I don't want to play into it. But I had an NHL executive, talk to me the other day about a really good player for Buffalo and saying, do you think he's available? And I said, I don't know. Where'd you hear that? You would know better than me. You're in contact with these guys. And he said, I think the guy's available. And I'm like, whoa, that's shocking. I said, how are all these names getting out there?
Yeah, there's a lot of leaks out of there right now, Pierre. I agree with you. And every time, like one of these names. Now, you made a great point there that I didn't think of, Pierre, and I'm good on you in saying maybe it's not so much about, his point production or his potential as a player. It's more about they're trying to change the dynamic of the dressing room. That could very well be it now that you think of it. But I just don't understand some of these names coming out of Buffalo, especially after we just mentioned earlier in the show, the Dylan Cousins trade. It's like, why is Buffalo always in a hurry to trade really good young players? It baffles me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, I will say this. Jarmo Kekalainen has moved on there, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And Jarmo's got tremendous sensibility. He's got a lot of experience. And, he didn't say much. He was at this wedding I was at last weekend, and we visited it briefly, but never talked about Buffalo. We talked about a lot of other situations. We never talked about Buffalo.
Well, we will see what happens there. I hope they don't screw it up again, man. They need to turn that around, but I'm agreeing with you. Jarmo will be good for that team for sure. All right, next. Is that it? That is it, Pierre. We're all done. Good timing, right? It sounds like you're at your destination.
No, not there yet.
Oh, okay. Not yet.
Not there yet.
We'll get there.
Just trying to be a teammate, Jimmy. I'm just trying to be a teammate.
Oh, you're a great teammate. You're a great teammate, Pierre, and I appreciate it. And thanks to Ed Jovanovski for joining us. What a great suggestion.
He was excellent.
He was really good.
Excellent, Jimmy. He was so good.
He was really good. Thanks to Shane working the boards up in Montreal. Thanks to all of you for your questions in the Q&A section. To everyone listening and watching, we appreciate it. Finally, some hockey tonight. Enjoy Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. And we will talk to you here in the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network tomorrow.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.